Hey friends, Sleepy here, and welcome to a new episode in my discussion series Consoles, Games, Collecting. Today's topic is going to be physical versus digital collecting. Now, I know this is a topic that I have actually seen pop up quite often in the last few months. I see a lot of people who are into physical collecting, but I've also seen there's a lot of people who are into digital collecting, and I've seen people who have kind of bickered back and forth about which one is actually superior to the other. And I know there are people that are on both sides of the fence. There are a few people who are kind of in the middle of this, but I have read a lot of comments of people who have strong opinions on whether they like collecting physical games versus collecting digital games. Of course, you guys know I want to hear your thoughts and opinions on this subject that we're going to discuss today. If you guys would like to leave a comment, let me know your guys' views on this discussion. Let me know. I would definitely appreciate reading your guys' comments. Maybe this is one of those topics, though, where you feel that you need to film a video response because a comment just won't justify your view. It just would take too long to type out a long comment to go into detail about why you prefer one or the other. If you guys do decide to film a video response, I just ask you to let me know what that you filmed a video so that I can check it out, and then I can also leave a link to your video as a comment so that others can find your video response and they can also enjoy it. So if you do film a video response, just let me know about it, and I will leave a comment to your video so others can find your video and they can watch and enjoy it as well. So, you guys know, I'll let you guys know my thoughts on this subject and where I stand. Now, if you guys have been following my channel for a long time, then you definitely know that I am on the side of physical collecting more than collecting digital games. And now, when I'm talking about digital games, I'm talking about ones that you actually buy from the marketplace, from like either Microsoft or Nintendo or Sony, from their online stores. I'm not talking about, emulation and downloading ROMs or anything. That's a whole different area when it comes to like physical versus digital collecting that we're not discussing in this video about emulation or anything like that. This is about being able to buy physical games versus buying digital games on a marketplace or Steam, etc. like that. Nothing to do with emulation. So we'll just wanted to get that point across. That's not what I'm discussing today about physical versus digital. I'm talking about the digital games that you can actually buy from Nintendo or Sony or Microsoft or on Steam. Wherever you get your digital games from. So for me, I have always preferred physical game collecting, and a lot of that has to do with when I was first buying video games years ago, when I started collecting, when I started playing video games at 4 years old and beyond. The internet wasn't around always, so there was not a huge access to digital games. Now, in the 90s, Sega did have this little Sega Channel accessory that you could plug into your Sega Genesis, and you could actually pay a fee to download games on the through the internet in the service and your cable and stuff. But it wasn't something huge like it is today with streaming and everything. So I think a lot of that has to do with why I'm into physical game collecting more than I am into digital. Whereas I know a lot of younger people who are gaming today have always had access to internet and had connection with broadband and stuff. Have always had access to all this stuff digitally. So I can see why they might prefer digital collecting over physical collecting. As I'm 37, so I've been growing up with gaming since the NES. That was the first console I had an experience. And so I've seen how gaming has progressed from the old 8-bit days to what we have now with PlayStation 5 and the amazing graphics and adventures you can go on. But I've always enjoyed owning physical copies of games. That way that I can play them and enjoy them anytime I want. And it's just something like nice to have, something you can hold in your hand, like this old Hogan's Alley for the regular Nintendo. I just love having the physical cartridges because, of course, you can get these games digitally, but I like to own the copy and have it physically in my hands that I can play anytime I want to and pop it into my Nintendo and I can play and enjoy this title if I want to. It's just something that I've always enjoyed having. Now, of course, I know there will be people who will say, that when you get into collecting physical games, they do take up a lot of space, and you guys can see behind me, there's a lot of stuff here. I do agree that collecting physical games can definitely have some cons when it comes to taking up space, and they can also take up money, as there is a huge cost to collecting physical games nowadays versus in the past. So I do know there's also that con as well that people will bring up about collecting physical games. Now, for what I would say for people who do like to collect and want to get into collecting physical games is, if you limit yourself to only buying games that you actually intend to play and not loading up your collection with filler titles that are just going to sit there to look pretty on the shelf, you can definitely manage the size of your collection and not have to worry about it taking up too much space. When you're running out of space, and you're, complaining that, like, man, I've just got too many games and stuff, you need to reevaluate your collection. Like, am I playing this games? Why am I buying this for the collection? Why is it taking up so much space? Is it not bringing me enjoyment? Maybe I should sell off some of that stuff and get the games that I actually truly want to play. Because you could set yourself a goal of maybe like having two of these 5 case bookshelves, and whatever fits on there game wise, that's going to be my collection, and it's not going to spill into anything else. That would be a great way to keep your physical game collection from growing out of control and taking up too much space, and also taking up too much money by just constantly buying games and games and games. So I could definitely would suggest that for you guys. If you're into physical game collecting, just keep it to games you want to play. Pick a couple consoles and a handful of each system games for each one that you want to play and enjoy, and then start working on beating those games, and then you can add some new games after you beat the ones you already have. There's no need to have to build a massive giant collection of 8,000 games physically to collect just because someone else collects it. Just collect for yourself if you enjoy it. But I've always been one that likes my physical games, as I like to own my own experiences, as I have encountered problems when it's come to the whole world of digital collecting, especially when it comes to like TV shows and movies and stuff, where we have access now to your Netflix, and you've got the streaming services and Amazon Primes and all that stuff. You have access to TV shows, Hulu and stuff at your fingertips for a price that you pay every month. Have different movies to watch. However, for me, I find that there's less and less stuff on those networks that I want to watch as more and more of them pop up. They take the rights to their properties, and they want you to pay them for a subscription service. So if you basically want to get everything you could have access to, you got to have a whole bunch of different services, and next thing you're spending a couple $100 a month on all these streaming services, and then you also have to have the time to watch them all. Where I prefer to have my own physical movie and TV show collection, which I actually do have a very vast library of movies, Blu-rays, TV shows that I can watch at any time I want. And I've shared this issue that I had one time with Netflix back probably like 6 or 7 years ago now. But Netflix had the original Law and Order show, which there's 20 seasons of. I love that show. I've been watching it over the years. My mom and dad actually are the ones who got me into Law and Order, and I've loved all the different series. Well, I was in the middle of watching that Law and Order show on Netflix. Got to probably think like season 7 or maybe to season 8. And then the next time I turn it on, it's gone from there, and found out that it's because the license expired for Law and Order and they no longer had it. So I lost access to being able to watch it, and that really ticked me off. Well, luckily I was able to find out that they had released a big giant 20-season box set of the original Law and Order for $200 they had on eBay. So I bought that with free shipping, and now I have that show that I can watch and enjoy anytime I want. I'm not at the mercy of a company or somebody that's dictating when I can enjoy my own experiences, because that happened with Law and Order. They took it away because of the licensing issues. I could no longer watch and enjoy it when I wanted to. Now that I have the DVDs, I can watch it anytime I want. Another one like I have like is the original Star Trek series. This is the first season. I have this wonderful remastered DVD. Anytime I want to watch this show, I can pop it in and watch it, and I'm not at the mercy of somebody that says, sorry, you no longer have access to it. Because when you're on those digital streaming services and stuff, you're at the mercy of that company, and the plug can be pulled from you like that at any time that they want. Which also leads me into why I like having my physical games versus digital games, because the digital games are not always supported forever. And we've all seen this with like Nintendo when they closed down the virtual console for the old Nintendo Wii. You were able to download regular Nintendo, Super Nintendo games, DS games, some Sega Genesis titles. You were able to even TurboGrafx 16 games. I know they had some of those on there. Well, once they shut down the servers, you can no longer re-download those games anymore. Whatever you had on your hard drive, that's it. You no longer have access to all those games, and they have not brought a lot of those games back into the Nintendo Switch service, which they've recently announced that the Nintendo Wii U and 3DS libraries and online services will be shutting down, and eventually you won't be able to buy those games either. And it's a shame because there's a lot of great digital only games on those marketplaces that are going to be gone forever, and you'll no longer be able to get access to them because companies like Nintendo don't always support their old IPs forever, and it's such a shame. Where if I have it physically, even if they get rid of it on that digital marketplace, I can still enjoy and play that game. Like this Tokyo Extreme Racer 3 I have for PlayStation 2. This was available for download at one time digitally in the PlayStation Marketplace, but it's no longer there. Since I have this game here, I can pop it in and play it anytime I want to. I can go through and enjoy it, and there's no one out there saying I can't enjoy it, which is something that I like. Another one like, got a classic Command and Conquer Red Alert Retaliation. Wonderful RTS. This is an expansion pack to the original Red Alert game. Great game. Have it here. I can play anytime I want to. Now, I do understand and agree that physical collecting in the modern age here with 8th and ninth gen gaming is really more requirement that you have to have internet. Like I understand, having like do have the physical copy here of Necromunda Hired Gun. It's a Warhammer 40,000 first-person shooter, really fun game. I do understand though that you really do need the internet to fully enjoy these new games, as a lot of them do have day one patches and updates, and sometimes you will find out that the physical game is not always 100% contained on the disc, that they only contains a portion of it and the rest you have to download. And you do have to install these new games. So at the end of the day, I do understand that a lot of these new games, these CDs are really just a CD key, and that I can understand why some people say you might as well just go with collecting the digital versions of it. I still like my physical collecting, so that's why I do like collecting these physical copies of the 8th gen games. Now, me personally, I have not even got into 9th gen collecting, as there's just not as many games for me out there as there were in the past. I know a lot of people do love Game Pass as an example. I have read a lot of people talking about the positives of owning the Game Pass for Microsoft consoles. I know Sony recently announced that they are changing their PlayStation Plus service with different tiers, and you're going to have access to games that you can download and stream to your console, and have access to all these games to play for free, which I think is awesome. I think it's a great service, but it's just not a service for me, as I like to own my own experiences, because with the Game Pass, the games are on there for a limited amount of time, and then they're taken away, which you can then obviously buy them digitally. But I can see where people like it, because it's a way for them to play access to a whole bunch of games without having to actually physically buy them for the $60 and $70, because games are expensive, especially now with PlayStation 5, at $70, where I can see, the Game Pass is a great way for you to test out these games and try them out and beat them. And I know some people who put a lot of time into these games. They download them and beat them, and they move on to the next game, and they're happy and content with that. Myself, I just don't have the time to devote to subscription services like Game Pass, as I may go a few months without even wanting to play an Xbox One title and decide I want to go back and play a different system. So for me, it doesn't make sense to keep buying and paying for a subscription service to something that's not being used every month. For me, it's $15 a month. I definitely would want to get my $15 worth by playing a few of the games where I might go through and not want to play them at that time. I don't always play games as they're released. Like some people, as soon as the new game's out, they want to play it right then and there. I used to be like that, and played a lot of the games on launch day, like when Gears of War came out and the Halos came out, and I played through the stories and stuff. But as I've gotten older, my time has gotten more limited. I have a family now, I'm married, I have a son, I have responsibilities at work, so I don't always have the time to play games as they come out. And they also come out at a really quick pace these days too, compared to the past. There's just so many come out at a time that you can get overwhelmed and don't have time to play them all. So that's where if I own a game physically, I can always come back to it later. Another reason too I like to sometimes wait on playing a newer game is because a lot of them do require those day one patches and updates, and there's all sometimes game breaking bugs and stuff. We all saw that with the whole Cyberpunk 2077 issue and the Grand Theft Auto Definitive Editions, that the games were practically unplayable until they were able to patch and fix them. So sometimes it does pay to wait a little while to play a game that has all the bugs patched out. Also, sometimes too, you can get games that are released later on with like complete collections where they have all the extra DLC they added to it and all the extra content that you can get. Even in Xbox like 360, the seventh generation of gaming, there was a lot of reliance of online stuff. So like I have this Ultimate Edition of Dragon Age Origins, which is a game that I really loved. And what's really cool about this collection is it actually has the main game, it has the big expansion pack, and then it has all the other DLC, and it's all contained on this other disc. So I could actually still play and enjoy this game, as this has the latest updates and stuff on the disc, because this version came out way after the game was out. You have access to all the content without needing the internet, because the servers for Xbox 360 will not be up forever, which is a shame because eventually we will lose access to some of these great 360 games, especially the digital ones in the Microsoft Marketplace on 360. I mean, they're still supporting it now because the Xbox Series X and S do play 360 games through backwards compatibility, but eventually the servers will shut down, and some have already shut down for the 360 games, which is a shame. But they're moving on because not everybody's going to be into playing the older games, which is another thing I've seen people commenting about who really don't get my perspective as far as like collecting old stuff and playing older games. They're kind of in like, I only play the latest and greatest games. Why do you want to play the old stuff? Like, I've kind of been dealing with that my entire life. Like when the Super Nintendo came out, I had a lot of buddies that didn't play in regular Nintendo anymore, and actually got a bunch of their old games for cheap because they wanted to buy the new latest and greatest games on Super Nintendo. Why do you still play regular Nintendo, man? Super Nintendo's out, man. It's awesome. You got to play it. It's great. Then the 64 comes out. As the games consoles have progressed and you got better games visually, people weren't always into playing the older games and collecting and buying them. It was all about the new stuff, and who cares about the old stuff? Well, I still see that even in today's day and age. I've read a few comments where people are like, "Oh, I don't understand why you want to sit back and play old games when you can just play the new games." I get the new game, I got Game Pass, I download it, I beat it, and I'm done with it, one and done, and I move on to the next game because there's just too many games coming out that I don't have time to go back to play older games, which I can understand. You enjoy just playing the latest and greatest games, but for me personally, like, I just don't find as many new games to play as I did in the past, and it just has to do with how I've changed and evolved as a gamer. I used to be into competitive gaming and playing Gears of War and Halos Online, and back in the old original Xbox days when Xbox Live first launched, playing Mech Assault Online and competitively. It was really fun to play those multiplayer games, where these days, I prefer just to play single player games at my own pace for my own enjoyment, and I'm just not really into the whole competitive multiplayer gaming anymore. That there's so much focus these days with modern games is focused on multiplayer, like the racing games, being always online. And I like to be able to enjoy my games offline whenever I want to. Maybe the internet's down or something, I want to still be able to play and enjoy those games. So that's a big reason why I like my physical game collecting. But I can see where people do love the digital side of stuff. There are some cons too with digital gaming that are annoying that I have encountered. I know that my one buddy Dean actually has encountered recently. It's that the games have continued to keep getting larger and larger. You have to download these games, you have to get them updated, and especially on Microsoft with the Xbox consoles, downloading and stuff is really slow compared to like Sony and its PlayStation. Games there download and update really quickly, where on the Xbox the servers can be really slow at times, and you're really reliant on your hard drives. And I've had before where a hard drive has crashed and I lost everything on the hard drive and I had to start over from scratch, which is definitely something that happens with these modern games is, they're on that hard drive and download it, but what happens when that hard drive dies? Because like anything, eventually, constant use of those hard drives, the parts inside eventually will wear out and that hard drive will die and you'll have to buy a new hard drive and you'll have to re-download everything you had on that drive. Well, if the servers are gone, unfortunately, you will not have access to re-download your content because they will not support it forever, regardless of whatever they say. They'll keep supporting. Just know, as we've seen in the past with like Nintendo and stuff shutting down their marketplaces, and Sony was talking about shutting down the PS3 and PSP and Vita libraries. They aren't going to support it forever. They might tell you they are, but just know at the end of the day, as a business standpoint, they're not going to because it doesn't make sense. If it's not making them money, why do they want to keep supporting it just because we like it? So I just don't like the reliance on servers and the digital future that we have with gaming, which is why I'm kind of on the fence about even getting into ninth gen gaming. I haven't even found one game that's made me want to get a ninth gen console other than the upcoming Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine 2 that's coming out. Otherwise, I can't justify spending $500 for a console and then 70 for just one game. Like I gotta have at least 10 games to make it worth it. And maybe in the future, if we as we get more ninth gen games released, maybe I'll find some that I'm really interested in. But currently, at this time in 2022, I just don't see myself having any need for a new console right now. So I've got so many 8th gen games I haven't even finished and completed yet that I have enough games in my collection for original Xbox and regular Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Sega Saturn, PSP. I've got so many games in my collection that I could stop playing modern games altogether and have enough games to last me the rest of my life. So I will always prefer physical game, and I'll hold on to them as long as I can. Even though I know buying these 8th gen games are pretty much just like a CD key that not always are on there. Um, just like a pipe dream holding on to physical collecting because I've always preferred it over digital collecting. Now, if we do eventually go to 100% digital collecting, I will stop as it's just not my thing. I like to be able to own my experiences and be able to play and replay them whenever I want to. So I'm really hoping, though, that with these new consoles, that they will be able to find a way to preserve this stuff. As I know there are people working behind the scenes trying to preserve content and stuff. I know there was a bunch of people who downloaded and did backup and preserve most of the digital content you could get for the original Xbox. Once the original Xbox Live went down, there are places and people who actually have access to all this content saved in a server, which is cool. I know there's been issues with PlayStation, with like PlayStation 3 and 4, with their CMOS batteries that have been discovered that if that battery dies and you're not able to connect back to the internet and update it with those files, your PlayStation console is virtually rendered useless because it needs that CMOS battery to have the correct files to play games. So I know that there's those issues. There's also the issues with like the Xbox Series X through backwards compatibility. You have to be able to connect to the internet in order to download the games. That because it's a software emulation and not physical hardware emulation, that your old games that you pop in your disc, popping in one of these discs in there doesn't actually play off the disc. Recognizes the disc and it downloads a digital copy of it from the marketplace, which is not something I really enjoy. Which is why I prefer my physical game collecting. Another thing too that's annoying with playing those digital games, especially backwards compatibility on the new consoles, is like with Xbox 360 games, you have to be online in order to save. It can't save to the hard drive on your local console. It has to be saved through the cloud. So once that service is gone, you'll no longer be able to play backwards compatible games on the new consoles if that server is gone, unless they do a patch or update on the consoles to let them save offline and keep whatever you had downloaded digitally on there. So for me, I'm always going to be into collecting more physical games than digital. Of course, I do own some digital games. There is a bunch of games I have got free over the years, as I have been with Xbox Live for like 20 years now. And through Xbox Live Gold, and they have given me a lot of games for free. There are some that are only available to me, like with Xbox One titles, that as long as I have my subscription active, I can play them, download them, etc. But once I lose the Xbox Live Gold service, I won't. I will lose access to them. But there are a bunch of those I have digitally. Now I have bought a bunch of games digitally on sale thanks to the marketplace, because there is the positive thing that a lot of times you'll get these 30, 40, 50, 60, 80, I've even seen 90% off specials that Microsoft and Sony and Nintendo will run on their digital shops. You can get like a whole complete collection, or they'll give you a whole pack of like an Assassin's Creed. You might get like all Assassin's Creed games in one big giant pack for a great deal, which I definitely can see the pros of, digital, being able to get special sales and stuff on them, especially with, I know how physical game collecting has gotten expensive with some of these, these old titles and stuff that used to be like $2 or $3 have gone to like 10, 20, or some have just be gotten crazy expensive. And where I can see there's the pros of the digital one, like, you can download, a $600 RPG for 15 or 20 bucks from the PlayStation Marketplace, an old PS2 RPG that's so expensive nowadays. You can get it digitally. So I do see the pros of the whole digital side as well. I do know, that you can fit all your games on a nice little tiny hard drive, and you don't have to have games taking up space at all, which I definitely get. But I've always been, more partial to physical game collecting. It just comes from growing up that way and not always having access to the internet. But I definitely know there are pros to having digital games as well. Like I said, I have bought some digital only titles, which I really wish they were physical so I could have them preserved. Because if I know if the hard drive dies, I might not be able to re-download them. But unfortunately, sometimes, especially a lot of indie games, that's just how they're released. They're only released digitally. Now, you guys know I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on this. Where do you guys sit when it comes to physical collecting, digital collecting? Are you on one side of the fence strongly more than the other? Or maybe you're kind of in the middle and you like doing both. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts. Leave me a comment. If you guys decide you want to film a video response, I'd love to watch that and check it out. Just let me know about the link so I can check it out, and then I will leave a link to your video as a comment so that others can find it as well. Want to thank you guys for watching. Take care. You guys have an amazing day, and Sleepy will see ya next time.